Good morning. It is Monday, July 12th, 2021, and this is DC Signal to Noise. Since we last checked in, the official rainfall total in Waterloo, Iowa, get this, Jim, 0.14 inch.
God, that's about what the Nationals are batting.
We'll get to that here in just a moment. I think we had just a touch more than that outside of the bunker here, but not much more. And what we did get is used up by now.
Well, what's the market outlook? Are they?
Well, they're looking at a chance for rain tomorrow into Wednesday. There's not a lot of chance for rain in the northern production areas. I'm telling you, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, when you look at it as a percent of normal rainfall over the last 30 days, way behind, dude, way behind.
Yes.
Markets overnight, corn just slightly higher. I'd call it 1 to 2.5 cents higher. Beans, the new crop contracts, 2 to 3 cents higher. That was it.
So they're going to want proof from USDA survey. So it could be a while, but I think I'm hearing what you're signaling, that this outside of the traditional Corn Belt, but the expanded Corn Belt, especially in the Dakotas, they're hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. So that rain event that's supposed to happen Tuesday into Wednesday, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of organization to it either, Jim. It's going to be a scattered event, but Eastern Belt still soggy. Really great conditions on a lot of corn crop over there. The bean crop's in pretty good shape. The East Coast still wet, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And the West Coast is hot.
They're very hot. Death
really
Valley
hot.
Death Valley is living up to its name.
It certainly is. Triple-digit temps through the middle of this week at least. And what's not hot, you already mentioned it. Neither the Cubs nor the Nationals are hot at this time. Cubs go into the All-Star break having won just 2 of their last 10 games, 2 games under 500, third place in the NL Central, 8 games behind the first place Brewers.
Yeah.
Nationals, they've won 2 of their last 10. They're 5 games below 500.
Yes, every time I get excited on them, then they let me down. So I don't watch them. I'm just a sore loser.
The good news here for the Nats is they're just 6 games out of first place instead of the Cubs being 8 games out of first place.
Yeah, well, we'll come back when Strasburg, our pitcher who helped us win a World Series, but he's he's out a lot. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, Schwarber was out of the lineup with the hammies, so
yes. And we miss him.
We'll see. Yeah, absolutely. Well, the Cubs missed him in June too. Okay, they missed anybody that hit 16 home runs.
Second half, here we come.
Yep, I'm AgriTalk host Chip Flory. That is Pro Farmer Policy Analyst Jim Wiesmeyer. And Jim, before we look ahead, let's look back at some of last week's happening to make sure that we understand the signals that have been sent.
Sure. Well, first I want to talk about, I was in near Charlottesville, Virginia, Fishersville, Virginia. Beautiful country, Chip. You would just simply love it. And I was at the Virginia Cattlemen's meeting. They had dairy, dairy producers as well. Brandon Reeves put on it was a trade show. There were congressional staffers there. I met the Virginia Department of Agriculture director and commissioner. And they had a very good turnout, and I had more than a few who listened to Signal to Noise or watch it, and also AgriTalk. So had a lot of representatives there, and it's always good to catch up at the grassroots level. And they gave me feedback on the announcements that we got. But the interesting one that I may want you to comment on, Chip, is one cattle producer came up to me and said, with the spread between cattle prices and the packers, with JBS in both Brazil, big in Brazil, and the U.S., you don't see the price spread in Brazil, but you do see it in the U.S. Why is that?
Boy, that's a really good question, and I think it's probably got something to do with a couple of things. The rate of recovery from the pandemic low, because we ramped our beef demand up so fast here in the States. And when you look at it domestically at the retail level, it never really, it only got better through the pandemic. But when you bring the restaurant and the food service side of things back, Jim, you ramp that beef demand back so fast that the packers, the packer is the one that's going to make the money off the beef. Feed yards have got to make the money off the cattle. And it still felt, until maybe 3 weeks ago, it still felt like we were trying to get feed yards current. And we've started to pull the weights back. And that's a good sign that maybe we're starting to shift some of that leverage back to the feed yard. I'm not saying that it's a wholesale shift in that leverage, but maybe there's going to be a little bit of negotiating power for the feed yards in the cattle market in the next couple 3 weeks that might make it a bit better.
Yeah, and almost everyone liked the announcement of increased funding for an expansion of the meat processing capacity. That was well received down there, Chip.
Yeah, it's going to leave me a little concerned, Jim. I tell you, when you look at the drought and the heat that we talked about out in the West, and it's not just the West Coast, it's the western 1/3 of the country, and the cow liquidation is real from North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, over into California and up in the PNW. The beef cow liquidation is a real happening. Now that's putting more product on the market.
Yes.
You would think that would start to take some of the shine off of the boxed beef market. And maybe that's what has been behind the pullback in boxed beef prices. But long term, what are we doing? We're making smaller calf crops going forward. And that first smaller calf crop, when's it going to be available as a market ready animal?
Yeah.
About at the time when this expansion is going to be coming online. So we're going to have fewer market ready animals at a time when we're expanding the industry. I hope that some of these funds are coming in forgivable grants rather than loans, Jim. Because if it's a loan, it might be hard to pay off. If it's a forgivable grant, then we're going to bring expansion into the industry like crazy.
Wow. That's interesting. Yeah, I told him it looks like short-term woes here for the prices on the cattle market, but as you said, with lower, numbers ahead, that at least the technicals are flashing that they could get higher prices.
Well, and the structure of the market, Jim, the structure of the cattle market, I'm looking at it right here. The August contract 119 on Friday's close. The April 2022 contract is 138.
Yes.
So the structure of the market is already showing us that if demand can hold steady, our numbers are going to be coming back enough that it'll support a much higher market for us into the spring of 2022.
But you mentioned the Friday reports. We had a big executive order from Biden, and then separate USDA with Vilsack going to Council Bluffs, Iowa, near Omaha. USDA is responsible, Chip, for 1/5 of the 72 specific points of action in that executive order. That shows you the tilted side on the ag sector that they focused on. And I know their language, they told USDA to, quote, rejuvenate the livestock seed, fertilizer, and retail food markets. So I didn't see much on the seed industry, and I got several emails on that. So I'm gonna look into that this week. But we had a flurry of USDA announcements from Vilsack. We caught wind earlier on that he would announce at least $500 million, and he did that. And then they they announced even more money for very small to medium plants. I would think those would be the locker plants, wouldn't you think?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. We're starting to get some comments and questions in.
Sure.
So keep them coming. And if you're not familiar with how to do that, over on the right side of the page, your screen, there's a comments tab. Go ahead and click on that and enter your comments there. I want to go to the one from Chad first here. Do we know if the expansion program is going to be spread relatively uniformly across states?
Well, USDA is out. This isn't really going to start until after fiscal year 2022 begins October 1. And trust me, it won't begin October 1. They're calling for basically public comment and information. So a quick answer to your question, if they do it right, it will be spread out.
Okay.
So yes, I think so.
Chad, drop me another message here and let me know how your bill in the Iowa House to support lockers is going. Is it? I guess I never did get an update if it passed or what's the status of it. And because Jim, Chad's bill, and he's a House rep in Iowa. Chad's bill in the Iowa House would also provide some funding for to take meat cutting education to the community colleges and expand that, so that you don't just have a guy like me that walking off the street and saying, yeah, hey, I can cut meat. Yeah. You've got somebody that's actually educated in how to do it, walking in there and saying, listen, here's my certificate. I can help you do this.
Well, that's getting back to the technical schools in the past that I think we were remiss not to continue with adequate funding.
Right, exactly. Here's one from Robert. He says, if you know somebody that's trying to get into the cow-calf operation besides USDA FSA loans, what kind of grants are out there for them? I think most of that grant is going to come through a USDA agency of some sort. Young farmer, a beginning farmer, loans and grants. I would think that would be the primary spot. I don't think you're going to go to any of the organizations and find a lot of money that's going to help you get started in a cow-calf operation, is there?
No. And, Vilsack, it was very interesting. He announced the initiative on, several, after visiting the site of a planned $325 million cattle slaughter plant near Council Bluffs. Yeah. That was I would think, with private industry and maybe a government, sponsorship to some, degree. And then he toured the combination butcher shop and meat storage plant. So those were all signals, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's the update from Chad. It says, we are in the rules making process. It passed unanimously. Funds should be available later this year. The education task force will begin soon.
Well, more power to you, because my father was a successful businessman, and he kept on telling me we need the rise again of the technical schools, because he had to educate for people working in his, several of his businesses.
Yep. Excellent. Are you a bit surprised that the source of the $500 million was from the leftovers from the American Rescue Plan?
Yeah, that's interesting. What does that mean? They took it from something, Chip?
I have no idea, Jim.
Yeah, I've got those questions out there. There were some people signaling that they may tap the Commodity Credit Corporation. They're replenished in the new, fiscal year. So that could always be a fallback there. But I want to know if that's part of the original $4 billion, which it will be, they said. I want to know what the revisions were. And if there were groups, maybe, I'm just speculating here, contract hog producers, part of it. I don't know, but I'm going to find out.
Okay. I want to go to this question from Mary Ross and make sure that we get this included here. If dairy prices don't improve, would the culling of dairy animals affect this meat market? I'm going to jump in and say yes. If we get a fair amount of culling. But Jim, isn't there more help coming for the dairy industry?
Significant help. Yeah. And that's what I told the dairy producers there. We had what I called the milk dud lack of announcement by Vilsack a few, weeks ago. They were supposed to announce anywhere from 700, now it's 725 million to up to $1 billion in indirect payments, Chip. But we have some others. We have the milk donation program. I'm looking at my chart to see. I'll come up with it in a minute. Dairy, what I told them down there. We've got a series of payments coming out in the dairy sector. I mean, big time stuff here. We've got the dairy donation program. We got this thing to deal with the cheese, the increase in the cheese prices, how that affected what they got in their COVID related payments. So they're going to have a differential payment coming out. So as the government usually says, help is on the way.
Yeah, as the government normally says, and Mary's making a point of that, all talk, no action on dairy. That's not exactly true. The dairy industry has gotten a lot of payments, and Jim, these payments are coming.
Yes, extra dairy payments, 750 million to $1 billion, $580 million in additional DMC payments are still pending. And the dairy donation program is still at the Office of Management and Budget as of this morning, and they're planned at $400 million. So, and then we're going to have a continuation of the new food box program, but I don't even know what they're calling it, but it's basically the same thing. So the support is there, Chip, on the dollar side. To me, there's no doubt about it.
And the old food box program, it played a role in creating those hugely negative PPDs, producer price differentials.
Yes.
And essentially what this next round of payments is designed to do is to replace the PPDs that didn't show up in the milk check.
Yeah, it's to pay for the unexpected development. That we see usually see when a policy is announced, unintended consequences.
Yep. And when that cheese price went through the roof, it created that big PPD.
And I talked to a number of cheese producers down there, independent cheese producers, and they were very happy of what's happening in their industry, Chip.
Okay.
For sure.
USDA is going to revitalize the Packers and Stockyards Act to fight unfair practices and rebuild competitive marketplace.
We've been through this before, but we're going to see, will there be teeth in it? See, what's the enforcement mechanism? And basically that's what they're trying to put more teeth into the PNSA. Okay. So we're going to see,
Okay.
They want to address what they called oppressive practices in chicken processing. That's their words, not mine. And they're good. If you can, it's not even going to be necessary to demonstrate harm or likely harm to competition to establish a violation of that, Packers and Stockyards Act, Chip. That's a major change.
Right.
And, all these rules were put forth by the Obama administration, but they were revised or withdrawn by the Trump administration. So you can see they have to be implemented, and it's going to take a while again.
Yeah, very good. Very good. USDA will also issue new rules on labeling so that domestic farmers and ranchers don't have to compete with foreign companies that mislead consumers. We're talking about the product of the USA label here, Jim.
Yeah, but the word that jumped out at me, they're asking USDA to consider issuing new rules defining when meat can bear product of USA labels. Not quite sure why they used consider, Chip.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure either there, but this, and we've talked about this before, this is a loophole. There's no way that we should be bringing in a carcass from any other country that was born, raised, and slaughtered in another country and then brought into the U.S., put a knife to it, do one more cut, package it, and call it a product of the USA.
Yes. Yeah. The overall message in the livestock and meat industry is, yes, we need more processing capacity. You can argue how much more and in what structure. Yes, we need to deal with, you just said, the silliness of that existing product of USA labels, because let's make it made and processed in America. So I think that those are the good signs on this.
All right. That's enough looking back. I do want to mention that Jim is going to be with me on AgriTalk again this morning, and he's going to help me to summarize this, and he's going to be part of a conversation with Representative Cindy Axne out of the 3rd District of Iowa. She was on stage with Secretary Vilsack, traveled with him. We'll find out if what the conversation was behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
As this was taking place.
Yeah, and her timeline on the implementation of some of these things, and the important votes coming up on the 2-step process on traditional infrastructure and the human area of infrastructure. They call it anti-poverty now. But I also want to ask her, Chip, and this is a news development. I understand in the House this week we could have introduced a WIP Plus bill for 2020 crop, disasters. Remember derecho and some other, aspects in the southeast U.S. and perhaps for 2021 as well. So I want to see if she's going to be part of that separate bill, and that I think will be included in a must-pass bill later this year, Chip.
Wow. Okay. All right. I want to talk a little bit more about that and how that whole process is going to get through. But first, let's take a look at what happened over the weekend. Sir Richard Branson and 3 Virgin Galactic employees went into space over the weekend. I'm just wondering if you're going to be on the ride with Jeff Bezos here in another 8 days, Jim.
I'm a very aggressive traveler, but I don't want any part of that. If I'm going to go out in flames, it's going to be some other way.
Is there any lasting impact of the private industry getting into space now, Jim?
Is there it's more efficient, and the technology gleaned from research of going into space, Chip. I mean, you can count products. The lineage of some of the most successful products began in essence with the initial trips to the moon. So yes, I'm in favor of exploration, no doubt about it, because of the spin-off effects. Yeah. Of a host of areas that keep us in the loop, because China sees it as well now, and that's why they're aggressive in space exploration, let alone what you learn in cyber warfare.
Right. Yep. Good perspective there. Yeah. John Kerry is in Moscow today.
Yes, and he was the first one to visit a Chinese official, and now he's the first one to visit a Russian official. I think that's the initial signal here. And 2, it's going to be interesting to see if he can get Russia to officially announce what they can do, because their economy would feel the negative impacts if they, really sign some of these, dotted lines here. You would hope that he'd ask also about the cyber skullduggery that they're obviously a part of. So I think it's interesting that they're getting the global approach now, because he's the global end of the climate change.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. You said it, the Senate returns this week, but the House doesn't. They're out for another week. And
yeah, well, the House is in what we call
relatively short period of time before they go back on recess again.
Yeah, there's not much time. This is why I want to ask you, Representative Axne, what's the timeline here? Because the clock is ticking, and the Senate Majority Leader is already signaling to the senators, Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, that they may have to cut into their long August recess. That's traditionally used as a saber rattler to get them to get going. But I think we're going to know within the next few weeks, Chip, whether or not they have the votes for the traditional infrastructure. And then they really have to work on the second part, that reconciliation bill that's doesn't have much leeway, and they're going to have to throw some money at some of the far left Democrats
Jim,
to vote for it.
they keep renaming that
They
portion
do.
of the bill, the reconciliation portion of the bill, anti-poverty, human infrastructure. Are they just trying to find the name that attracts the most support?
You hit the nail on the head. Yes. Anti-poverty is the more recent one that I've seen, and these words are important, and they test all the time what works out, Chip. This is why, from a political stance, they did not like liberal Democrats. That's why they came up with the term progressive Democrats. Yeah. So, and the Republicans do the same. So, yeah, they're testing this, but anti-poverty must be working out for them.
Okay, Jim, we're getting long on time here, and there's one thing that I missed that I want to go back to that we got word of last week. China reduced their reserve requirement ratio. Why?
Well, their economy is tempering right now, and they're nervous. Plus, they have several industries that are not doing well. So, and they don't really like their past history of these cuts, RRR cuts, reserve requirement ratios. They don't like to use this tool when the economy is doing well. So that tells you the economy is not doing as well as they want. And we're going to see it in their second quarter GDP, their economic data that we'll get this week. And their easing cycle has started. So the analysts that I respect expect another cut of 50 basis points in the fourth quarter this year. So there's the signal I'm getting from industry analysts, Chip.
All right. Any other legislative initiatives that we need to be aware of, Jim?
Watch this week. There's an undercurrent in town that there may be a separate bill introduced on ag-related broadband. So if that's the case, that's another one I want to ask, or I hope you ask Representative Axne. I don't know whether that's coming from the Senate or the House. So, and that'll be probably rolled into one of these two, mega bills. So we've got a potential update coming on WIP Plus for 2020 and 2021, and a very targeted ag-related broadband, bill going through the hopper, Chip. So I think that's a positive development.
Okay, very good, very good. And the last thing that we should really mention is we've got the supply and demand report out at 11 o'clock Central Time this morning.
Yes. What will they do? It looks like corn carryover will go lower, all things being equal.
Yeah, right.
And what will they do on Brazil's corn production because of the repeated problems they've had with the safrinha crop or the winter crop? So we're going to see, and this is the first survey estimate of spring wheat. So that's going to be a focus as well.
And an update on the winter wheat production, wheat crop as well. So
yes,
that first survey-based estimate of the spring wheat crop, I think, is going to be very interesting. It's going to be very revealing. North Dakota in the last crop condition and crop progress report had 50% of that North Dakota crop in poor to very poor condition. The U.S. crop was 50% poor to very poor. So when you start looking at numbers like that, you start wondering just how much we have already taken off the crop. The markets are reopened. They've been open here for about 15 minutes already. We've got corn that's trying to trade steady, just a little bit higher. Some pressure on the July contract, but that's some delivery contract issues going there. Soybeans are 3 to 7 cents higher. Soybean oil is trading to the upside again, Jim. And if I scroll just a little bit further down, oil is backed off of the overnight highs because with crude oil during the day session, crude oil is backed off. Those two markets are starting to trade together. We had a great conversation with Greg Anderson, who is a farmer from eastern Nebraska, but he's also on the National Biodiesel Board. Had a great conversation with him last Wednesday on AgriTalk, the Farmer Forum, about the development of those biodiesel and the renewable diesel markets. And Greg is coming back on tomorrow morning in the final segment because we didn't have time to get to the development of the aviation fuels.
Yes.
Okay, the bioaviation. This is a potential huge market because the airlines, they want to run from carbon as fast as they possibly can, as the bio and renewable diesel and renewable aviation fuels. It's a huge market. Huge market.
And they'll have maybe an incentive relative to the coming climate change, provisions to do so. And that brings me up with my last thing I wanted to point out, Chip. Child tax credits of up to $300 per child each month begins today. The IRS is sending the first round of payments. And, for 2021 only, the child tax credit was increased from $2,000 for each child age, 16 or under, to $3,600 per child for kids who 5 years or older, and $3,000 per child for kids 16 to 17 years of age. Now there's adjustments depending on income, but this is another cash infusion that I think the market may not be penciling in, Chip, as far as a lot of money out there, but it also has the potential of keeping perhaps more workers in the homes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at that child tax credit coming your way and weigh it against what are some, we look at inflation in commodities. Well, if you want to spot inflation, go look at what childcare costs compare, this year compared to last year.
Yes.
It's unbelievable. Yes. All right, Jim. Well, the best news that I've got for you this week, Jim, is that we don't have a game until Friday. It's All-Star break.
Well, the best news I have for you, the best line I got down in Virginia is when I put up a point that said, some restaurants want to be fancy and announce before you go in that they don't serve any meat. And I said, when I see those signs, I walk right back out, and I got a pretty, pretty big applause on that line.
There you go. Good stuff, Jim. Hey, we're going to turn up the volume on what's happening in Washington, D.C. on AgriTalk at 10:06 Central, and we'll get market updates at 2:06 Central in the afternoon. As I said, Jim's going to be with me this morning, conversation with Representative Cindy Axne from Iowa. Yeah, she's becoming a regular on AgriTalk.
Yeah, and she's a good one, too. She's a good one.
She was with Secretary Vilsack last week. Have a great week, everybody. Keep watching for those signals.